Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and today's video, that's right, it's another Todd Grande video. So this morning I went on YouTube, as I do when I wake up, just to check what's going on, and I saw that Dr. Grande had dropped another little nugget. Don't know why it's being recommended to me. I think because I follow a lot of like trauma related content. I love that. You know, I love that when you're following content about trauma and serious issues, you're being recommended people like Todd Grande. I just love it. It's so good and healthy for people. It's exactly what I want victims to be seeing. But okay, this one came out 3 hours ago. And I thought, why not? You know, he's put this out, I might as well make a response. I know lots of other people call him out as well, but I just get very, very frustrated by people who are jumping on the bandwagon to bully somebody. And like I've said before, I made another long video about something that Todd Grande made, but there's something especially wicked to me as the way that he kind of like passes it off as this academic, unbiased, reasonable kind of package, you know, which he puts into items, as we'll see, and then he just spouts the same troll stuff. And I'd honestly just have more respect for him if he was like, you know what, I'm just a guy, these are just my opinions. He sets himself up like he's, you know, a real expert here. Okay, so this one, I was surprised to see this one. So usually he does true crime cases. He's moved more into the realm of celebrity recently. But this one is interesting because I can't actually see how this relates to his subject matter at all. Of course, if the subject matter is just making a bit of money, you know, it's lucrative, isn't it? It's quite lucrative to jump on the hate train right now. I guess in that regard, it's in keeping with the channel. But this one is called Prince Harry and Meghan Markle Receive Opportunity to Gain Insight from South Park Episode. Okay, and there's a picture. The thumbnail is the South Park depictions of Meghan and Harry. With the caption here, respect my authority, and then Dr. Grande. And, you know, we talk about projection a lot on this channel. And every so often when we go through this, that projection alarm is going to go off. Respect my authority. Who's trying to present themselves as the unbiased authority here? Who's trying to do that? It's just really interesting. But we have got to a point where a doctor who talks about all these like psychological issues and things is now analysing South Park. Which wouldn't even be bad if it was like, you know, actually analysing the thing. It's not, it's just that kind of vicious enjoyment of the hate campaign and mockery. That's kind of what it is. But it is amusing to see even this split into items and analysis. So let us begin. So he always begins by telling us he's not diagnosing anybody. You know, this is a regular disclaimer. You know, for videos like this, I don't even know why he kind of begins it like it's going to be this academic mental health conversation. It's a troll video, right? It's just a troll video to further bully someone because it makes someone money. Like, at least be upfront about it. You know, at least others state how they feel. You know, if I make a video about something in someone, I'll say, this is the reason I think this. Here's the evidence for why I think this. And by the way, it's just my opinion. I'm not going to imagine if I sat there and set up at like a table and I sat there like it was academic and I said, greetings, scholars. Welcome to today's lecture. I hope you're taking notes. And I sat with like this real distance between us, like I was objectively, you know, just giving facts about things I knew nothing about, but I was playing the objective role. You know, there is at least something more bearable in people who, although they might have views we don't like, at least they're brave enough to own it. This just feels really cowardly because it's like, no, I'm just being academic. And so there's a really sassy tone to this. So here we go. We begin with the analysis section as always. Okay, so he begins. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, was born in 1984. He's the younger son of King Charles III and Diana, Princess of Wales. In July of 2016, Harry started a romantic relationship with an American actress named Meghan Markle. The couple married in May 2018. In January 2020, they announced they were stepping back as senior members of the royal family. A few months later, they moved to the United States. And enjoy that part, because that is the only factual and unbiased part of the video. Love it. Little Wikipedia search, I love it. Okay, then it goes into Harry and Meghan launched a bizarre campaign of self-promotion to establish themselves as privileged victims. Your Honour, leading. That's leading. I just love how it starts with the veneer of professionalism, right? So it's like the date of birth, very calm. These are the individuals involved and these are their titles. And it's almost like a little bit of a sassy jump scare if you're a first-time viewer, because it gives you this kind of blocky information and locations, etc. And then suddenly, like, leading on for that, he'll veer into, and the subject is a little rat and I hate their face and they're an abominable human. Anyway, this is their date of birth. Okay, so he goes on to say, they frequently complained about the British royal family in the British press. Harry and Meghan have had success in attracting a wide audience, but not in gaining the approval of a wide audience. I would say that's sort of okay. I mean, for him, it's unbiased-ish. Yeah, I think it's hard to deny that they've attracted a large audience, but there is a huge split on people's opinions of this. Fair enough, right? Okay, and I can't even explain this to you if you haven't watched it. In the meanest little voice you could imagine. Like, it's like, imagine like a high school bully kind of voice. He suddenly goes, despite the couple's failure to offer any value, has made millions of dollars in deals with Netflix, Spotify, and other companies. This is somebody pretending to be an academic, but it's properly leaning in for a gossip time. Harry has been promoting a book titled Spare, which contains unsettling details about his life, and, of course, more complaints. I just love that this professional sees talking about abuse as complaints. I love that. He sees it as an annoyance. Okay. He goes on to say, the royal couple clearly believe they are extremely important and everyone should listen to them all the time, but they have struggled to create a message which isn't self-centred or grandiose. They have never been able to explain what value they have to offer to society that can counterbalance having to listen to their constant whining. And again, I can't do justice to the delivery of constant whining. I really can't. It's like nobody's making you listen, lad. You're loving it. You're loving it. Okay. So interesting, isn't it? You know, when people struggle to get their message across in a way that isn't self-centered or grandiose. That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that is an annoying thing that happens. He's right. It's so annoying to listen to someone's constant whining. You know, when they're not offering anything of value to the conversation. Like, yeah, he's right. He's right. Okay. With this in mind, the producers of the TV series South Park apparently saw an opportunity to showcase the failings of the royal couple. Oh yes, to showcase the failings of the royal couple. This is still the unbiased part. Oh yes. If you haven't seen a Todd Grande video before, it's an extravaganza. It really is. Okay. On February the 15th, 2023, which just happened to be my 51st birthday. Love it. You know that last bit about people struggling to create a message in a way which isn't self-centered or grandiose? Okay, very, very helpful information. Okay, the series released an episode titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, and here is a summary of that episode. The Prince of Canada and his wife, who are strikingly similar to Harry and Meghan, go on tour to demand privacy and promote the prince's book titled War. He also tells us the spelling of War. They end up moving next door to the well-known character Kyle in the fictional town of South Park, Colorado. Sorry. Hearing Kyle described this way. Okay. It's like cars in court. They cause a commotion, then scream at Kyle, and when he complains about it, they accuse him of violating their privacy and otherwise harass him. Okay, so in this reading of the episode, it sounds like the thing that's so frustrating in the story is that somebody is putting up with a lot of abuse and bad treatment, and then when they try and bring up the fact that they've been treated badly, they're basically smeared and yelled at, right? And the people that have actually taken part in the abuse start acting like the victims. If we look at the situation, who do we actually think, using our brains, in the situation of what's happened? Who's in the Kyle situation? Okay, so let's just get serious for a moment here. So in that exact situation, imagine, let's go there, you know, let's have fun. So Kyle, let's say Kyle is the Harry and Meghan character. Let's switch this around by that logic. So the media causes harassment and stalking, and Meghan faces a racial bullying campaign. There's a lot of misogyny, like she becomes a hate figure in this country, and she's in actual danger. You know, our security services have said there have been legitimate threats to her life, and they think Harry's a race traitor as well, so that's lovely. Anyway, meanwhile Harry is being brought up in an abusive system, as the spare. There's a lot of emotional neglect. The whole family are kind of raised as mascots. we know the emotional abuse in the family, and a lot of control in the family and the dysfunction of the family, because numerous people from the family have spoken about it before. Most notably Diana, but this isn't the first we're hearing of it. Harry was stalked since he was a child, chased by photographers. He watched his mother have breakdowns over being, stalked by photographers, and then his mother died being pursued by photographers. And then when he was grieving for his dead mother, he was still stalked by the press and scapegoated and made less than human. And this is somebody who never consented to be in the public eye. He was simply born part of the brand. So let's just look at that in the lens of the press treatment of Harry and Meghan, right? So they endure all that abuse. Harry endures it all his life. And then Meghan starts enduring it, the racism and the sexism, and it starts to impact her mental health to the extent that she's scared to go out. And when they raise their concerns, which they do multiple times before this goes public, they are dismissed and actually painted as the villains. So when they talk about the press intrusion and the appalling behaviour of the press, which isn't even deniable because it's right there, it's right there in front of us. It's not even like a theory, it's a thing we know about. Suddenly the press act like the victims as if they're being silenced, and then they start this massive, even louder campaign against Harry and Meghan. So in that context, the person who is bringing up a complaint because people are mistreating them, then being further mistreated, those figures are Meghan and Harry, aren't they? Okay, further information about the episode plot. Okay. Kyle goes to a brand management company, only to find the prince and his wife are already there. They're trying to figure out a way to get back at him. The prince gets upset after realising that his wife only echoes his voice. I don't know, I've got to say I question that reading anyway. Is that what we're meant to take from that scene? I'm not even, this isn't even me being funny. Is that what we're meant to take from that? I thought the implication is that there's nothing in there and that she's empty, because it comes in the context of a scene where he's talking about, there's more to us than brand building, right? Let's be these great people. And then there's nothing, the kind of nasty joke, I think, is meant to be that there's nothing inside her, right? That she's completely empty and she's just like a brand machine. I didn't think the implication was that she's just like echoing his words and parroting him, because actually in other scenes that I've looked at, she interrupts him a lot, so she's also being portrayed as quite overbearing. So I don't know if that reading is correct. I might be wrong. I haven't seen the full episode. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Now moving to my analysis. This is always the most fun part, because that last part, it was so unbiased and objective, like it was almost boring. Like I couldn't even detect any sort of bias in it. I don't even know what he thinks about these people. He's so neutral. Okay. And now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. And I can't, it's funny, I'm sorry. This is a South Park episode and he's reading it like it's a police case file presentation. Okay. Right, item number 1. And again, we're going to see items. There's an item list of 6 here. Not long after the South Park episode was released, there were unfounded rumours that Harry and Meghan were looking into filing a lawsuit against the producers of the TV series. A spokesperson for the couple denied this rumour, referring to it as boring. That's a strange way to describe a rumour. I wonder if the spokesperson didn't slip there for a moment. Like perhaps they were thinking of someone else, or even a couple. Yeah, I mean, maybe it was a slip. Maybe the spokesperson had just watched a Dr. Todd Grande video. No, but I mean, what does this even mean? Item number 1. So first of all, right, the unfounded rumours. So when I made my video about the South Park thing, so I was under the impression, I saw people tweeting about, oh, apparently Harry had called them, but he didn't take their calls. Anyway, since then, their spokesperson have said that, there is no sort of like legal filing kind of thing. So I don't know if people were making that up or if it was a miscommunication, but there's no evidence for that. So that was just something I'd seen tweeted. What I don't understand when it comes to Todd Grande is he picks the strangest things to find curious. Curious. He really does. So the spokesperson says that the rumour is boring, right? And he finds that really odd. Is it odd, though? I mean, I feel like it's referring to, I mean, I might be wrong, but I would have thought it was, like I'm bored of this constant, like, negative press. Like, I'm so bored of having to put the record straight because royal experts keep spreading rumours. Like, that's what it means, right? I mean, sometimes when I watch Todd Grande videos, I feel like I'm losing my mind because things that make perfect sense to me are presented as if we're in topsy-turvy land. It starts to make you feel mad. It really does. But also, like, it doesn't make sense, like, so the idea of referring to it as boring, and he tries to work in a little dig about, oh, that person said the word boring. Well, how about Meghan and Harry are boring? What about that? It doesn't really work. Like, this is not professional. This is basically just schoolyard stuff, isn't it? It's like someone you don't like at school walks into the room and someone next to them puts their hand up like this to scratch their nose, and then you turn around and go, oh, do you know why they put their hand on their nose? Maybe it's because you smell. That's the level of these jokes. Okay, so then we go on to item number 2. Okay, so then he says, I don't know how that rumour ever emerged in the first place. The couple would have a very tough time prevailing with that type of lawsuit. Well, if you think that's not something they're even doing, then why are we then sitting here like, anyway, they couldn't do it anyway. I thought you just said they're not doing it. Okay. South Park is not the news, where there is an expectation of being factual. Rather, it's a comedy show. It uses satire and has broad protection under the First Amendment. The show didn't do anything in that episode that violated anybody's rights. Now, of course, my argument would be that, you know, it's not nice to ruthlessly attack somebody and bully them on such a level, especially someone who we know is suicidal and has been struggling a lot. And I know people are allowed to do it. I just think it's morally not right in terms of, you know, what's the crime? I will get to this later. Think about the level of hatred, right? For Megan especially. When you start asking people what the crime is, they don't seem to know what to say. And that's how you know what the crime is. We know what her crime is. It's pretty obvious what her crime is. They won't say it. They won't say it. Doesn't make any sense. They just all go along with each other in this kind of Emperor's New Clothes kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, right, we'll back each other up. She's nasty, right? It's not that I've got this stereotyped image of her. It's not that I'm prejudiced. It's not that I hate her unnaturally. No, we're all right, aren't we? Aren't we? It's just this desperation to keep this thing going, because the moment someone steps back and actually asks, like, what has she actually done? I understand, like, you know, it's like, okay, like, you don't like her, you know, if you might say, well, I don't like her because of this, or I don't like her because of that. But when it comes to the hatred, right, the extreme level of hatred towards her, there is no answer. They have no answer, so they have to keep going along, you know, and creating this monster figure, because it's shameful and it's embarrassing if you actually look at what she's meant to have done, which in my mind is exist. I also think it's really interesting that he's talking about, you know, the expectation of being factual, etc. Am I wrong, or does he present his whole videos as this, like, factual exercise, you know, this academic research-based thing? I don't know if he's the best person to talk about how you represent your message and biases and what's factual and what's not, but there we go. Okay, item number 2. I find it interesting that Harry and Meghan had their spokesperson comment on the rumour but did not take the opportunity to say something else about the episode. For example, they could have said that they found it funny, entertaining, hysterical, witty, astoundingly accurate, or any number of other compliments. Someone's been looking in the thesaurus, get you! It goes on to say, they could have represented themselves as laughing along with everyone else. If they were willing to acknowledge how ridiculous their behaviour appeals to the outside world, this would have prevented the couple from appearing petty, hypersensitive, and insecure. Appearing petty, hypersensitive, and insecure. There's an alarm going off. What alarm is that in my mind? Petty, hypersensitive, and insecure. I don't know. I just can't put my finger on it. It's really curious, isn't it, that word choice? Really curious. Okay, why would you laugh along with something so hateful and cruel about you? It wasn't just, like, criticism, right? They went in pretty harshly. They actually called Meghan, like, the B word. They attack her with all these different nasty labels, and they present her as, like, less than a human. And an empty human. Like, sure, we could all do with learning to laugh at ourselves, but what I would think somebody who understood mental health would know is that, no, you don't have to laugh along when you're being bullied and abused and mistreated. You're allowed to have boundaries, and you are, in fact, allowed to be upset. And I hate that bullying mentality. It's like if a kid's getting bullied at school, and it's like, why don't you just, you know, just laugh along and they'll stop? Well, no, because you shouldn't have to laugh along when someone's bullying you. Like, the morality of his takes worry me so much. Why would it be funny, for example, to Harry, to watch them do that to his wife, while he knows that his wife has suffered suicidal ideation, has 2 young children, and has also miscarried due to severe stress? Like, I just don't understand why would you laugh along with that? Like, why would you laugh along with that? You know, it's this idea that, oh, victims should just get a sense of humour. It's very easy to say that when you're not the victim of a bullying campaign. We know that Meghan was scared to leave the house and that she suffered panic attacks, and that the intention is to make them a laughingstock. And this professional's idea is just, well, maybe you should laugh along. Maybe you deserve it, in fact. You know, maybe you should just laugh because you deserve everything you get. It's It's vicious. And then he says, I guess they've never taken any opportunity to avoid appearing that way in the past, so it shouldn't be surprising. No way has item 2 just been an insult unconnected to anything. Let me check. I think item 2 is just insults. Item 2 was literally just, why wouldn't you laugh? It was mean and you didn't laugh. You deserve to be sad. You deserve to be bullied. And maybe if you laughed and let yourself be bullied, people wouldn't bully you. Which is terrible advice, by the way. And is never the case. It's never the case. That's what people say when they're okay with bullying, isn't it? And I can't get over that. Look, this would have prevented the couple from appearing petty, hypersensitive and insecure. But they've never taken any opportunity to avoid appearing that way in the past, so it shouldn't be surprising. I just don't understand why he can't just own it. Like, he's doing a hate video, he's doing a crit video. It's not really based on much other than saying, you know, oh, I love the hateful South Park cartoon. I love how it got at them. I thought that was really fun. That appealed to my humour and my morality. I loved it. Why is he sitting there like he's objective and putting that into items? There's so much projection. The alarm is going off because those things he's saying about Meghan and Harry, like, they don't even fit this particular example he's using in this context. And there's no passion in it. Do you find that odd? Do you find that odd? Like, when I feel strongly about something, because I feel like someone has done something that's bad or harmful, or they have a view that I really, really disagree with and I think's dangerous, I come at that with passion and with emotion. I don't think I've yet managed to sit there really calmly and been like, yes, I love it. I love to see someone humiliated and mocked. I'm not even going to laugh. I'm just going to sit here and be sarcastic and enjoy myself. Like, there's something really odd about that, don't you find? To be able to present nastiness. It's one thing to be nasty. We can all be nasty. But to be able to present your nastiness in such a polished way, like to plan it out and deliver it so coldly, is really worrying to me. Like, it's very, very cold and considered nastiness. I don't know, that it just seems there are many alarms going off is all I'll say. Okay. Item number 3. What depictions about Harry and Meghan in the South Park episode do I think were insightful and accurate? I mean, I don't know. He's kept his cards so close to his chest at this point. You know, he's been begged to tell us. Like, we couldn't possibly know what this man thinks about Harry and Meghan. You're so impartial and so professional. Just for once, tell us what you think. Do you like them? Okay. He always asks as well, like, he's being begged for his analysis of things that, like, happened so recently. And this isn't even in his area of expertise. Like, I don't believe people are asking. Maybe they are. Maybe they are asking. Maybe I'm being harsh. But it's very much like, you know, well, I didn't want to talk about it, but I guess you forced my hand, guys. You know I don't like to speak badly of the couple. But if I have to for you guys. Okay. He says, there is no doubt that the episode made good points about the shortcomings of the couple's strategy. Do you know what? What does that mean? I would love to just really calmly just be like, okay, what do you mean? Like, can we unpack that? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's the eternal question. What do you mean? I think it did a good job of showing how thoroughly the couple has embarrassed themselves. The episode accurately characterised the dynamic with the couple, provoking other people to watch them and then complaining about people watching them. I really do love to see a professional who deals with mental health issues and true crime issues with real victims, victim blaming and not understanding consent. Like, I love it. I love that this person with this platform has a mentality that, oh, you gave a little bit of yourself, therefore we're entitled to the whole of you. Like, I love it. I love the idea that people who are abused are in fact provoking their abusers. I love it. He says, and the lack of insight the couple has was featured prominently in the episode. They do not realise how other people perceive them. And I'm going to say I think they probably do. I mean, I think Meghan being sent racial threats and white powder to their office and basically racial abuse, and the security services saying that there's actual threats to her life from fascists and far-right people here, and Harry being called a race traitor, and the daily mocking and the tabloid campaigns and the lack of empathy when Meghan was actually close to suicide and people disbelieving her and somehow being unable to even feel sorry for a person that was close to taking their own life and had suffered documented abuse. You know, I think they probably know at this point how people perceive them. I don't think this is a situation of them not understanding the problem. And in fact, that feels gaslightery. Like, I want to make some joke here, but like, I want to make light of it, but I can't. It's too serious. Harry has been, like, on the world stage all his life against his will. Like, he's had to, like, understand himself from the outside in. Like, to look at himself from the outside. Like, What am I giving off here? Like, I'm part of a brand I never asked to be in. I'm under high scrutiny. Meghan has been, like, relentlessly pursued in a really scary harassment campaign here. Like, and then acting like, oh, they're so narcissistic, they don't even know how people perceive them. What does that even mean? On the one hand, you're like, oh, they don't know how people perceive them. And on the other hand, you're angry that they're talking about the way people perceive them and trying to put their own point across in response. Like, it doesn't make sense. Okay, then he then goes, and I got hopeful here. So he said, despite several good points, there were a few problems with the episode, which brings me to item number 4. And I was thinking, do you know what? I was actually thinking, you know what, Todd? I actually feel like he's actually going to, at this point, we've gone past some, you know, we've gone past the point of no return several times. But I thought he was going to say, however, you know, it is mean-spirited. And, you know, my hope was that he was going to sit there and say now, okay, maybe it was a bit mean. Sure, I agree with some of the basic premise, but maybe it was cruel. Oh, no, that's not coming from this person who's a mental health professional. Oh, no, that's not the takeaway. It's worse. Okay. What were the shortcomings of how Harry and Meghan were portrayed? Towards the end of the episode, Harry looks inside of Meghan's head and only hears his voice echoed back to him. It's a moment of realisation for him, like an epiphany. He decides to leave the brand management company. Despite understanding Meghan's true nature in that moment, he believes she's going to follow him. Okay, so her true nature. He's saying, he's so unbiased, you know, Meghan's true nature of complete emptiness. I don't know why we are getting like an English lit star. I was an English lit student and I got my master's in creative writing. I don't know. Actually, this is quite a moving depiction, a summary of South Park, isn't it? The story of a man's epiphany and eventual despair. His dreams crumble before his eyes. Anyway, sorry, I'll continue. He believes she's going to follow him out of the company and he is surprised when she decides to stay behind. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Either he had a moment of insight or he didn't. No way. Yeah. This man has gone full cinema sins on his own South Park summary description. Like he's actually going into, a flaw in the writing, methinks. I think, you know, the rest of the episode was great. So perfectly written, so well written, immaculate, brilliant, fantastic, you know, almost Shakespearean in content. I just think right there at the end, you know, I think the ultimate, the conclusion of the story, it didn't quite work for me, you know, maybe we could workshop it. Like, this is a South Park sketch. He's angry that he's now saying that either Harry had a moment of insight or he didn't. Look, I'm a character. I'm into characters, right? I like character writing. I got my master's in creative writing. And I just want to say, and I feel mad even getting into this, but actually it's a sign of good characters too. I'm like, even say I had your perspective, even say I hated Meghan and Harry the way that Todd Grande did. The actual idea that Harry would have the insight and the epiphany and then go back to how he was before is something of a tragic character trait, right? But anyway, we do not need to analyse South Park. Okay. Another problem with this representation is how it paints Meghan as just reflecting Harry's own nonsensical statements back to him. Like this was all Harry's fault and Meghan really didn't do anything but reinforce Harry's bizarre behaviour. Meghan really wasn't a contributor to what the couple had done. So the problem was, aside from, you know, that little writing thing at the end, you know, he thought it could have been written slightly better. The characterisation for Satire Harry could have been better. The journey could have been more full and complex and satisfying. Meghan, but Meghan basically, it wasn't mean enough to Meghan. Like, it didn't take enough hits. Like, yeah, she was called a professional victim and, you know, acted like she was empty and also controlling Harry and, like, butting in on him and called stupid, basically. She was called the B word and it was implied that all the abuse she got was kind of her own fault because she's on Instagram. But for Todd, it just wasn't mean enough. Like, it was so tame. It was far too tame for Todd. I mean, I don't know if he wanted an ending where she gets burned at the stake or something, I don't know. Also, I will say, I think he's misreading it. I do think he's misreading it. Like, there are multiple times in the clips I've seen where Meghan is speaking over Harry and not just reflecting what he's saying. You know, she butts in. They've actually written her as, like, butting in a lot. He goes on to say, I think a more accurate way to characterise the relationship is this. And I don't know how we've gone from, anyway, this is a South Park parody. Now it's time for me to analyse the relationship. I think a more accurate way as well, like, just say, this is my fan fiction of what goes on in that relationship based on my biases, or this is what I believe happened. Not, this is the more accurate way. Why is it more accurate? Because I think it. Okay, so he says, Harry and Meghan have amplified each other's worst characteristics. Each of them independently brought a victim mentality to the relationship. Right, I keep saying this. He's supposed to work, like, understand mental health and victims and things like that. They are victims. Like, I just don't... the victim mentality. So many people have this idea, oh, it's a bad word to be a victim. Oh, no, to be mistreated is a shameful thing and you just want attention. That's a disservice to all victims out there. Meghan has been a victim of extreme racial abuse, right? There have been actual documented threats to her life from our security services. Like, Harry has been actually stalked and harassed since he was a child in a very dysfunctional system, right? I don't know how anyone, even if they didn't like them, could deny those points. Like, they are victims of those things. And they discovered that quality in each other. Apparently they discovered a victim mentality in each other. They were amazed they found another person who understood how to be a privileged victim as well as they did. In this way, they are soulmates. Each of them wanted to spend their lives complaining, and now they can complain together. You know, I'm sure that's exactly what they wanted. Like, yeah, that's right, sure. They really wanted, after the trauma they'd been through, Meghan really wanted that level of racial abuse and threats to her actual safety and to the safety of her actual children. Yeah, she really wanted that. It's basically this whole mentality, this victim blaming thing, especially when it comes to Meghan and what she's faced. People are in, like, absolute denial of what Meghan has faced. Yet we all know it's a thing. We all know that it's running through. Even the criticism of her, which doesn't seem to apply to race, you'll often see people slipping into these racial stereotypes. And it's like this irrational hatred for her. I understand dislike for her. Like, I don't feel that myself. But, you know, it's fine. You can dislike another person for their views or their actions. This is not a dislike. This is an absolute hatred and dehumanization. And I ask, what has she done? Or who is she? What is she? That it's causing this reaction in people. They don't want to talk about that. No one wants to talk about that, but we all know, right? We all know. It's close to saying that, they just wanted to complain together. It's basically saying, oh, they wanted Meghan to get to a point where she was suicidal. And Meghan it's like when people get accused of playing the race card when they talk about their experiences of racism. I'm sure Harry really, really wanted to be traumatized as a child and to be stalked and harassed by grown adults. And this happening against his will as a child. Like, I'm sure that's exactly what he wanted. Like, come on. And let's just look at this as well. Like, I'm sorry. Meghan, before she joined the royal family, let's look at that. She was a success. She spoke often. She wanted to make a positive contribution. She's a great talent, right? But her crime, one of her crimes, is that she talks about things like, so she spoke about feminism openly, and she spoke about her experience of being biracial. And if there's one thing we know, it's that unfortunately being somebody who points out injustice in society, even today in 2023, means that you're going to get characterised as a killjoy who just wants to complain and is in fact a narcissist. You'll get labelled as a whiner and a woke snowflake. And the sad part is that these are the people who are actually people like that, who actually want to speak against, even though it's scary, against injustice, are the people that will give us our freedoms and our rights, basically, and have given us our freedoms and our rights. But at the time, they are derided and they're mocked by people like Todd Grande. Meghan wasn't out there, and you know what, it wouldn't matter if she was. If Meghan was somebody out there, let's just think about this. So imagine Harry had married a black woman who talked, whose aim was to talk about race, right, and the structures of white supremacy, and wanted to have those conversations and spoke so much more about her experiences with racism. What would even be wrong with that? Like, why? I hate this idea that to complain is always a bad thing. It depends what you're complaining about. Right, it's completely dependent on what you're complaining about. And I would say complaining about racism and being stalked and harassed is probably something that it's probably a good thing to complain about. Well, oh my god, I hope this guy doesn't work with people who actually want to disclose things. They'll just disclose some terrible thing in their life and they'll be like, well, you're kind of whining a bit, that's the problem. And that's why people don't like you. Okay. Harry worked on the Invictus Games, right? That's something that he's done a lot. They've both tried to make a positive out of a negative, and yet they're still being portrayed as being these constantly negative people. Yet we know that they tried to make it work for a really long time, longer than I think a lot of us even would have wanted and would have thought, you know what, just get out of there, like, don't compromise. They tried to make it work. You know, this narrative is just ridiculous. Like, is Diana a liar too? Right? The same thing happened to Sarah Ferguson, right? The same thing happened to Fergie. Like, are all these people also liars? Is Diana's testimony now meant to be untrue? Because I'm pretty sure even William himself would say that, you know, actually no, like, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to what happened there. There is a documented history of this happening in the firm. Like, this is not just two people randomly popping up and saying it. And even if it was, someone's got to start, right? Someone's got to be brave enough to talk. But it's not. This is a documented thing. We all know about it. So this, oh, they're just complaining about nothing. It's all, like, I can't quite believe it. Anyway, he goes on to say, Meghan and Harry are more powerful as a couple than they are individually. They reinforce and transform each other's insecurity and vindictiveness. The alarms for projection are going off today. Show me where Meghan's been vindictive. This is the thing, right? I beg you, show me that. Because what she's done is she tried to make it work and she's tried to endure it. It took her a really long time to speak, and then when she did speak, it was measured. And there was a lot she didn't say. For example, when the whole thing happened and Kate made her cry and it came out in the press the other way round, she could have immediately gone to the press and said, actually, it was this woman and I'm actually going to show you. Look, I've got people who'll say that she did. Look, I'm going to tell you all this stuff. That's not what she did. And also I have to say that wouldn't even be vindictiveness. That would actually be like her right to stand up for herself. But they've got this idea that she's so vindictive and nasty and aggressive, right? And she's got this ill intent and she's so negative and she wants to cause problems. And I just want to know why they imagine that around her. Because what do we know of Meghan in her appearances? We know that she is very articulate, very, very measured about what she says, more so than I think. And I think that's the gutting thing, to see this happening to somebody who's so careful with their words and so articulate. Because let's be honest, the most of us, you know, when we're in a situation of abuse or oppression, most of us are probably going to deal with it in unhealthy ways, which I think Harry did more when he was younger. I think that's the case for most of us. And we're always told, you know, you're always told, oh, well, if you're the right sort of person and you handle yourself well and with dignity, then we'll believe you. I think what this has exposed is that that's not true, because Meghan has done everything right. Right, there is no right or wrong way to do it, but in their eyes, and yet they're completely destroying her. That's absolutely terrifying. No words for the vindictiveness of the racist press, right? That vindictiveness. Not a word about that racial bullying from this doctor in this video. No, she's vindictive apparently. And we have to look at this depiction of Meghan and why it comes from these people, because what they're portraying her as dangerous, sneaky and sly and manipulative, right? Like she's kind of sneaked her way in with ulterior motives. They present her as disobedient, right? Uppity even. Bossy and overbearing. They also at the same time present her as stupid and that she's attention seeking and that she's playing the race card. You know, when it comes to Harry, you can see the anger in Harry, you know, which is fine. It's fine for a victim of abuse to feel angry. There's nothing wrong with that. But just look at it. Like, has Meghan shown public anger, or is she being incredibly measured? Because as a woman of colour on the world stage, she has to be. And yet there's still this idea that she's this angry woman. Why is that? Why is Meghan being pushed into that stereotype? Like, we know exactly why. He goes on to say, it's not just echoing the same sentiment back and forth like a tennis ball in a match. That was a really nice simile. They're actually building on each other's contribution and forming a new type of victim status, one tailored to people who are unbelievably wealthy and famous and who do not legitimately have much to complain about. How is this man who's supposed to be so academic and full of research that they do not legitimately have much to complain about? Like, I'm not just research the racial abuse that Meghan's had. There were actual threats towards them. Harry's been called a race traitor. It's all, I can't actually believe there's nothing legitimately to complain about. Has he ever, like, he can't even imagine, and this is a problem with him because he can't seem to imagine other people's experiences and feel empathy for them. He can't imagine how that feels and the racism that's been directed at her. But she was sent the suspicious powder. When Harry and Meghan welcomed their son into the world, not just a random troll but a British celebrity tweeted a picture of a monkey coming out of hospital. She's been called, you know, Queen of Monkey Island. There's been implicated, oh, they've said that, you know, her blood is different and thicker and is coming to make the royal blood different and more exotic. So her foreign blood has kind of got in and is changing it somehow. You know, the intense stalking and harassment of Meghan, making her a hate figure, the bullying of her, disproportionate stuff. And then to say there's nothing much legitimate to complain about. What does count as something legitimate to complain about? I guess something legitimate is to complain about is, you know, if you sit there and complain about a couple you don't like. Just sit there constantly talking about the couple you don't like. He then says, the superpower that they develop together is the ability to take the smallest offence and represent it as the worst thing that could ever happen in the world. I suppose it's a good thing for them that they have this talent, because they do not seem to have any others. Like, this isn't even clever. It's just mean and victim blaming. Taking the smallest offence and representing it as the worst thing that could ever happen in the world. I mean, being actually threatened, having your life threatened because of your race, I think is probably not the smallest thing to happen in the world. Really. And I think this is what people say when people come forward about abuse every single time, because there's always going to be someone who has it worse. Every single time. So they'll go, oh, but, you know, stop complaining, you know, it's not that bad. You're just making everything all about you. And bear in mind that Meghan has been made out to be inhuman, and people have, like, started to hate her here, like, over a long period of time. Or they've tried to make people hate her. And there have actually been actual threats to her life, like physical, I can't stress that enough, actual threats to her life. And then the firm stripped away their security, leaving them in physical danger, and their children in physical danger. Like, I just, there's something evil in it, right? Item number 5. Harry and Meghan have not indicated how they really feel about this South Park episode. How did they react to watching it? Item number 5 then is just throwing out a question. Throwing out a question now. Item number 5. Wonder what Harry had for breakfast this morning. Curious. You know, my sources say he had cornflakes. But then someone else said that he had a bacon sandwich. And I just think that makes him untrustworthy to me. The fact that I found 2 different sources that aren't from him and they're different, which just adds to my feeling that he's a very untrustworthy man. Very untrustworthy. He says, well, of course, there's no way to know for sure. I mean, we gathered. But I can put together a theory. What do you mean, put together a theory? Just say, like, I don't like them and this is what I think of them. Like, you know, these are my items. This is my theory. Like, you're not Sherlock Holmes. It's his theory of what could be happening in a situation like this. I don't know. Okay. One could argue that Harry and Meghan share a number of characteristics. For example, they are grandiose. Are they? Vindictive. Ooh. Insecure. Petty. Hypersensitive to criticism. Have a sense of entitlement. And have no insight. Siri, what's projection? He goes on to say, now looking at the South Park episode, we see a correct and devastating portrayal of the couple's behaviour. When a married couple with these characteristics is forced to face their behaviour in a blatant way, like watching the South Park episode, one common reaction would be denial. And I don't know if that's the word he means even. What does he mean? In denial of the episode existing? What does that mean? I don't know. Okay. So perhaps the couple was just looking at the episode and dismissing it as incorrect or maybe mean-spirited. Like it's just some silly cartoon that doesn't mean anything. They'd be so silly, wouldn't they? How foolish they'd be to actually think, wow, this is a mean-spirited cartoon that we actually aren't gonna let shape our worldview because it's actually really cruel. Oh no, you must listen to your bullies, of course, because there's no smoke without fire. There's always a grain of truth when you're being relentlessly bullied, of course. I just have to say there's nothing wrong with accepting criticism, and, you know, we can all look at our flaws. But if he should know, if he's in like the mental health field, that it depends if someone's giving it to you in good faith or bad faith, right? Some randomer basically just giving you a load of abuse about yourself. You don't need to sit there and be like, you know what, you're right, maybe I need to work on that. Like, it has to come from like a good faith person. Certainly, why it doesn't make any sense. He's actually suggesting that, you know, maybe they should have sat there and actually learned and taken some notes from this wonderful academic cartoon. He then says another common reaction would be defensiveness. So we're just now reviewing the ways in which human beings might react to seeing something mean about them. You know, they might cry. You know, they might not care. You know, they might have missed it. They might have been out at the time. You know, maybe they don't have that TV channel. Like, there could be so many items here. So anyway, I'll continue. Another common reaction would be defensiveness. The couple may view themselves as being attacked by South Park. It's because they are. In their way of thinking, the manner in which they are portrayed only proves their point. Everybody is out to get them. Right, okay, and sure. So wouldn't this person Dr. Todd Grande think, you know what, a really good way then to get my criticism to them, or to get the criticism out there, maybe might not be such a spiteful cartoon, really. Maybe that's not the right way, really, to get them to listen. You know, I'd have more respect if he'd sat there and said, you know, the cartoon was mean and it went too far. You know, he could have said, you know, I don't like them because of this and I think they're this, but the cartoon went too far, but I understand. Like, he doesn't say any of that. He's sitting there loving this hate cartoon. He then goes on to say, as far as their reaction to each other, a couple in this situation might be expected to argue after being confronted with such a scathing commentary, like blaming each other for the behaviour that led to the satire, or blaming each other for not stopping the criticism. He's now imagining, like, fictitiously, like, I wonder how they're reacting to this. Like, he's kind of hoping they're arguing, you know. He's kind of hoping, you know, I really hope it's not only upset them. I hope they're breaking up too, because I also want them to be alone. Really hope that. So nice, so lovely. And you know, it's like, yeah, sure, couples under pressure argue sometimes. Yep. Okay, he then says, now moving to my final item at number 6. We're finally there. These are always long because there's so much content. What would be a healthy reaction to the couple watching the episode? Like, what would be a positive way to react? You know, I was afraid of what was coming next, and I was right to. This is the positive reaction. According to Dr. Todd Grande, what's the healthy and positive way to react to this? He says, I think the South Park episode represents an incredible opportunity for the couple. It gives them a glimpse into how the world sees them. I mean, first of all, no, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't. People are very mixed. It really doesn't. But of course, you know, to be so publicly humiliated and bullied like that, after being racially bullied and abused for such a long time, you know, it's such a great opportunity. Like, it's such a great opportunity to better yourself, isn't it? When someone's being bullied into being suicidal, because people are always so much more ready to grow when they're in that state. He says, I doubt they'd laugh at the characters in the show. That would be asking for a lot. Yeah, it would be asking for a lot. Like, why would you laugh at something that, like, mocks you? Like, I understand. I think a small step would be simply appreciating how their behaviour has been hurtful to so many people around the world. Right. Who? So many people around the world. He feels personally victimised. Like, does he count himself among one of those people? Like, their behaviour's been hurtful to so many people around the world. Has it hurt Dr. Grande? I don't think it has financially hurt Dr. Grande. I think he's made a lot of money out of it. But their behaviour has been hurtful to so many people around the world. Like, who? What's he talking about? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, so frustrating. He also says, simply acknowledging that they have made bad decisions, which legitimately and appropriately attracted incisive criticism. I find it interesting that Harry and Meghan can hold the concepts of privilege and victim in their minds at the same time. Todd. Right. Research it. Like, just the concepts, Todd. Research them. Research them for your items. So being privileged and being a victim, they're not mutually exclusive, because privilege, for example, right, let's look at it seriously. So let's think about the fact that in the current system of white supremacy, you might have privilege, for example, as a white man, in the sense that you're not going to experience racism like a man of colour is. However, you might be a poor working class white man, in which case, in another sense, you're not so privileged. And as a man, you might benefit from patriarchy. I mean, that's debatable. I think patriarchy does harm men, but certainly there are opportunities you could have as a man through patriarchy. But then what about if you're a man of colour, or if you're a gay man? Look at things like, I mean, Marilyn Monroe, a victim of abuse, financially privileged. Britney Spears, a very recent example of somebody who has been quite abused, and is financially quite privileged. Princess Diana, like, I just feel like, does he not understand that? You can be materially privileged, you can be privileged in a certain manner and still be abused in a different manner. Like, how does he not understand that? Isn't this his field? He says they can rectify the differences between those two concepts to think of themselves as privileged victims. And again, like, I feel he's created the idea that they're privileged victims, right? He's created the narrative. South Park created that narrative. And yet he now seems to be believing it so much, and it's kind of bled into his thoughts, that he's now finding another reason why he hates them. They're calling themselves privileged victims. Soon it will be, they drew that South Park cartoon to put themselves on my screen. You know what? I hate that. I hate it. Right, he says, but they cannot see how they can be both offended and offensive at the same time. Maybe Harry and Meghan did endure some hardships. That's not what he said earlier. Maybe they endured some hardships. Maybe there was severe racial abuse, and maybe their actual lives were at risk maybe, you know, it's just a small inconvenience. But their crusade of constant complaining has created a calamity through offending others, which is more catastrophic than the couple ever sustained themselves. I hope you're still with me after that sentence. That's a Todd Grande special. It really is. You know, just the idea of a crusade of constant complaining. He has now seems to have he's watched the South Park episode and is now somehow seeming to believe it, to the extent that he now seems to think they're actually on Give Us Our Privacy tour, even though Meghan's not been seen for ages. They're not been seen. It's like they make things up to get angry about, and then forget the fact they made them up, and the thing they made up is then also Meghan and Harry's fault. He says what the couple should learn from the South Park episode is that it's time to end the privileged victims tour and initiate an insight tour. They've not left the house, Todd. Meghan's not been seen in a really long time. You are now criticising the fictional version of Harry and Meghan that you saw in South Park. While also, it's not reality, is it? That's not what's happening. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave this now. These ones are always so long, but I just have so much to say. These things keep popping up on my timeline. And it's just so... It worries me so much, you know. Especially like the reach that he has. And if you just look in his comment section, there's just a load of nasty people like, oh, you're so funny, Todd. Like, they're egging him on. Like, oh, I love how sarcastic you are. And oh, I love seeing the official veneer to my hatred. I love that. I love that because I don't like owning my hatred. I like to pretend it's academic, you know. I don't want to think about my biases. I want to pretend it's all an academic exercise. So yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. I know I try to keep it light. It's quite a horrible subject matter, but I do try to keep it light. I doubt that Dr. Grande will watch this or any other criticism. But you know, I hope he does, and I hope he learns from this experience. And in fact, I've made this really funny cartoon. He's gonna love it, right? I've done like a caricature of Todd Grande, and it's the funniest, meanest thing you've ever seen. And I just really hope that he sees it, and it's everywhere. And then he can just laugh, right? He can come forward and he can laugh, and he can show what a great guy he is, you know. While I relentlessly make this horrible and demeaning cartoon about him, he can just laugh and learn. Because that's the advice he gives out, isn't it? Anyway, love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.